It actually works surprisingly well.
Yeah.
Once the green light's on,
Yeah, as a camera,
it picked up.
it has a little trouble with audio, but
It has trouble with audio, as I'll say when I introduce it, when more than one person is speaking. Okay.
I'll just get the recording started. So we are live streaming.
Okay, good to go. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Okay, welcome to the April 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Youth and Education Committee. My name is John Keller. I'm first vice chair of Manhattan Community Board 6. Tonight we are joined by community coordinator Brian Lafferty. This meeting is called to order at 6:37 p.m. Thank you for your patience. Members of the public who are attending, as a reminder, New York state law requires all committee members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions you have by raising your hand. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. And we already have a wonderful volunteer to take our minutes tonight. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So we will now take attendance by roll call. Brian Lafferty will conduct the roll call.
Thanks, John. Committee members, I'll call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is a quorum. Stu Desser.
present.
Thank you. Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Thank you. Olivia Shrednick.
Present.
Thank you. Rabia Iqbal. Don't see Rabia. Katie Landa.
Present.
Thank you. David Lee.
Present.
Thank you. Sandra Lefkoff.
Present.
Thank you. With 6 or 7 members present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to put the agenda up.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is relatively brief. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. I see no objection. The agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minute, do we have the minutes on most recent meeting?
They're under review.
The meetings for the January 28th, 2025 Youth and Education meeting are being reviewed. When they are ready, they will be shared with the committee. So let's set some ground rules in order to conduct an efficient meeting. One, no one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members who are here in person, if you have a question about community business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I'll identify you so you can speak. Committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I will identify you so you can speak. This is a reminder, just only one person speak at a time. We have the owl works very well, but if more than one person is speaking at a time, members of the public watching at home can't understand what we're talking about. The chat function for committee members present by Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you're having or stated writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. So the first item on the agenda tonight is a discussion of the statement of district needs and budget requests. And I'm going to move to the second part of that immediately. And we're going to talk about a budget request that we have in hand and that Brian will be putting up on the board. This budget request, and I want to thank very much Rachel Kate Miller from PS 281, the president of the PA at 281, who was here to talk to us about this request. PS 281, as you know, is also known as the River School. It's one of our terrific elementary schools in District 2. And there are two infrastructure requests that have already been supported by Harvey Epstein and are, in the hands of, Carolina Rivera's busy office as we speak. And for all of this, I want to thank Kevin O'Keefe, who is, sitting here this evening as well, during Earth Day events elsewhere in the district. But I want to thank Kevin for working with Rachel Kate and PS 281 in pulling all of these together and doing the legwork. I think these are two worthy items for consideration. Kevin, do you want to make any background comments on this?
No, John, thank you for the kind words. I just will say that I know Rachel and I know the PS 281 PTA. They're really thorough, well organized. So, you know, if they say they're going to do something, they do it. And I know that one of their needs, Harvey, I think, tried to support, but with a state discretionary funding, it's actually not high enough a dollar amount. If Rachel can either agree or disagree with that. But we really do think that the water fillers need to be in not just 281, but all schools. But I'm just really here to let you know that I'm glad that a very busy Rachel made it in person, and that we should take all her requests seriously. That's all.
Thank you, Kevin, and thanks again for all the work that you did to get this to this point. So there are two items on the agenda, and I'm going to let Rachel Kate speak of each of them. The first is 5 hydration stations in PS 281, and I'll let you speak about that one first. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much for having me. This is my first time at one of these, so I'm not exactly sure how it will work, but I can just sort of start talking about how we got here, the context, and feel free to interrupt me with questions or clarifications. Yes, I am the president of the PTA at PS 281. We are a pre-K through 5 elementary school located on First Avenue and 35th Street. We are also co-located with a District 75 school, PS 94, and we are also in talks with them about the improvements to the building overall that we're sort of looking to make. The first one, the hydration station, and came from really just simple kind of updated modern needs. We have very old water fountains in the school that don't really have a lot of water pressure, and you know, kids today always have water bottles. Are found out toward the end of last year that our teachers are pulling their own money to get like jugs of water so they can have water during the day. And it seemed like this was sort of an obvious kind of ask of our community as parents to see how we could get about updating and modernizing basic hydration in the school. While sort of embarking on this, we learned a few things. One was that it's about $54,000 to replace all the water fountains in the school building, and that includes the floor that we're co-located with the District 75 school for these ADA compliant LK water filling stations that you have probably seen literally everywhere else around the city. And we had heard from another other parent at PS 116 that they had success in funding this project by going through their elected officials. So we kind of embarked down that road. We contacted Carolina Rivera, Harvey Epstein, Keith Powers, and Harvey has actually, every time we've ever talked to him, has always been the most responsive and just encouraging and happy to hear us out and with support of the project, but did bring up that what Kevin touched on. It didn't quite hit the $100,000 threshold. So we were like, oh, well, we have a list of capital improvements. I'm not sure how many folks here are familiar with the school itself, but it's a little over 10 years old. So it's fairly new and it's quite nice, if I do say so myself. We have a playground on the main floor, but also our rooftop is used often for recess. But the way it was designed, it's like cement tiles. So picture little kids, picture playing, picture soccer, and you see the challenges that kind of already brings to the table. And what the school would like to do, and that we're all in favor of, is astroturfing it. And what has always been a problem is when we've ever gotten bids has been the cost of doing those tiles. And so here we are, we're looking to ask for more money from our, community overall, and we have the roof tile chirping project at 90 Patham. So, I hope that covers a little bit of how we got here and sort of what we're looking for.
Yeah, I think it does, and there's also, Brian, can you scroll down to we don't have to go through every line of it, but the financial, they have details of the
Yeah.
finances of it, just so you know that this is not a number that was pulled out of thin air. This looks like it was carefully worked through by the folks at PS 281. And who put the budget together for it? It looks
There is another parent on the PTA executive board who really took the lead in sort of sussing out all the details. I will say I pointed him in certain directions and flagged certain things that if we are going to do something into a public school, that we do need to sort of account for DOE vendors and DOE building installations. And then we aligned with our assistant principal to kind of make sure that we were covering all of those bases and, you know, staying within our appropriate lanes and make sure we are accounting for everything we could. But the budget itself and the breakdown was really put together by Sagar Poulter, who's another parent, a fifth grade parent in the school.
I'm gonna open this to questions from committee members first, and I will note, however, if you go through the budget line carefully, you will see why things get expensive in the DOE. You have add-ons of various sorts, but we're not here tonight to settle the DOE policy. We're gonna try to get water and AstroTurf for this school. So I'll just open it to committee members.
I
Stuart,
have two really fundamental questions. You
Yeah.
said that,
owl, speak to the owl.
I really dislike that thing.
It's never said a bad word about you, Stuart.
Actually, it has. You said that there's a water pressure problem at the current water fountains, right?
I might have missed, I mean, it's an old water fountain, so it kind of trickles. It doesn't have a big spout, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, you understand the question is there a plumbing issue behind that? I mean, so that you're gonna install this new stuff and you're still not gonna have a sufficient amount of pressure or water volume in order to make these things work. So I'll just leave that as a question since it's something that should be investigated. I mean, it's kind of a shame that this is only a 10-year-old building. And they haven't gotten it right. The other question is just the AstroTurf. You're talking about literally this green plastic stuff that looks like grass.
Yeah.
Is that good for young kids as opposed to, for instance, the sort of running track material, which is softer, and gives you a better grip?
It's a really good question. So to your first question, I'm happy to ask more about with the buildings. I don't know, superintendent or Department of Buildings for the DOE, whatever the term is about the water pressure. And what plumbing might need to be done. There could be possibly some plumbing upgrades. I'm not sure, and I can go back and provide that information if that is helpful. I know 116 is a much older building and they got it done, so I'm not a plumber, can't speak to that. We deferred to the assistant principal's preference and the principal's preference for the rooftop. And they went with AstroTurf, like the fake grass, and I am happy to provide their reasoning. I know when we talked about this in other contexts, such as like St. Martin's, there's a heat concern sometimes too of the plastic softer materials. Obviously, it was like we go with the black one, I guess it was the brown one or a white one, but their request was the green AstroTurf, so that's what we went with.
And if it helps at all, I noticed in the request that there's both the turf material, which is on the top, like playground, right? And the shock pad under piece, which I gather takes care of some of
So
that.
first of all, I would not withhold my vote on either of these counts. But I would make an inquiry. I'd like to know if there's an issue. I mean, if a water fountain is barely spewing water out, then there may be a plumbing issue that also has to be addressed alongside this.
And the budget, and once again, you're raising a very good question. The specific budget suggests that because in addition to the $2,500 for the water dispenser. There's an additional 4,000 for plumbing.
Well,
installation
that
related
sounds
to
like
it.
making the connection though.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll see.
and so I'm just suggesting that
Yeah.
you check this out, because you don't want to get
Good
this new
question.
stuff installed and discover that it's still not working because there's not sufficient pressure or volume.
Mhm.
I also wouldn't object if AstroTurf is what's desired. Having once been a small child, I'm not sure that's what I would want, but if that's what the kids and the teachers want.
I mean, very similar, those small children go to St. Barton's, where they also play on the similar.
On
grass.
AstroTurf.
Yeah,
Okay, if it works.
And my kids, just not to date myself, played on cement, so all of this looks good to me.
Yeah.
All of it, good to me. Any other questions from members of the, I think we have,
but I totally agree.
Kevin has his hand up. Hey, Kevin.
Hi, I think as we all know, the budget requests really don't need to have a dollar amount. And I think we could just put in some plumbing language in there that cover any, needs above and beyond, right? We don't need to research the numbers. We just, request what the need is and have the electeds go out and source those numbers themselves, unless the process has changed. Am I correct?
I believe that's correct, and I'm also glad though that we have the i's crossed and the t's dotted or whatever happens to i's and t's on this one, but that's a good point. We could put.
You could put a general number in there for plumbing, and then, you could flag it as it may be above and beyond what we see on the surface. That way we'll cover it for the elected officials when they see it.
So we could put EST next to that or something, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Are there any other questions from members of the committee?
Sounds like plumbing or not, it's an inefficient system now that everyone has a water bottle, so, yeah.
Do we have any members of the public who might have a question?
No, I don't see it in present.
Okay, I mean, I'm inclined to be in support of this, but I can neither move, second, or vote on this, so I need a member of the committee to move it, a member of the committee to second it.
Just explain the mechanics. This is not a resolution. It's my understanding that with budget requests, we only need a casual consensus, that we don't necessarily have.
The new Sandy put in just March 26th. I don't know whether this got around to the whole board, but we have a new format we're trying to follow with a form attached to vote, to put the request in, and then we vote on the request, and then we have a short title for the request that goes into the minutes of the committee meeting.
I'll move the question.
Okay,
I'll say,
all right.
Kevin has an hand.
Kevin also has his hand.
Yeah, I was gonna do what transpired, and I also apologize for not being there in person. Something, a conflict came up. I was just going to call the question or second, but that's fine.
Okay, and should we pull, since the question has been called, should we go through the form? This is not gonna be a bulk form where we'll take half an hour to fill it in, but do you wanna go through the form so we can just fill it in? We have post-traumatic stress from bulk meetings. This is our business affairs and licensing committee, where we have this week, two nights, we have 30 different licenses to vote on. You're welcome to attend. Okay, so if the form is up, the first one is, remember to do the word new. So this is a new request, PS 281, funding for 5 hydration systems and a rooftop synthetic turf. As I wrote it down. And I think this gets actually to Kevin's point, a minute too, that it's a capital request.
We could make it a capital request. What's the bar now for a capital request? Is it over 50?
Over 50, that's why we're making it. Harvey suggested, Assemblymember Epstein suggested that we do it this way, so
Yeah,
he's.
no, that's good.
And the city agency would be the Department of Education. which CB6 committee has jurisdiction, youth and education. And it says a blurb, and I wrote a blurb, and anybody can unblurb the blurb, but I put in hydration station. And Brian, let me know if I'm going. Installation, why don't I just give it to you? All right, it's easier if I read it. Installation of 5 ELKAY, capital ELKAY. EZH, Echo Zebra Hulu 20, EZH 20 filtered touchless water bottle filling stations to improve hydration throughout the building. That's one of them. And then rooftop synthetic turf. Conversion of the school's rooftop into a cushioned, durable play space for recess, PE, and outdoor learning. With high durability artificial grass, impact reducing padding, and drainage support. And under that, just put details for both available on request. So then I'm going to leave it to the committee. I have an opinion, but the first is the impact. How much of an impact would this request have on Manhattan Community District 6? My personal view is that this is the only request coming from this committee, so I would suggest that the argument be that we consider this as having a high impact, but I'm gonna stand back from that.
So just a point of information, point of order. I don't know how this works, but I think, is that relative only to this committee? Or
Well, this is all committees are supposed to be doing this for all budget requests.
Right, so, but the question is how much of an impact would this have on the community?
It's a good question. That's what budget and what the business affairs and that's a business and government affairs committee will do. They will look at these and they make a judgment and rank them. That's what the committee does. So I'm urging, I would urge this or any committee to be fairly vocal about supporting anything, especially if it's the only one they're putting forward. But that's a good question, Stuart. A good question. That's what that committee does. So how much of an impact, how much community support does your proposed request have? We have the president of the PA who's speaking on behalf of the PA and another president, and we also have an assembly member well known to the board who is in support of it. And Carly and his staff has not had a chance to go through it, but I would be reasonably sure, knowing Carlene's proactive approach to everything, that they would support this, though I don't speak for her. And how feasible would you say this request is? I think it's high, but I think Stuart raised a good question, that asking questions about the water pressure in the building, I think is a very fair question. So if we could.
I would still rate it high.
I would rate it high, but then just say, question. And I've typed my name below, which is. Okay, so I will let I'll let Brian call the roll of those members of the committee who are here.
Committee members. We'll now take a vote on adding the new PS 281 funding for 5 hydration systems and rooftop synthetic turf to the list of budget requests. When your name is called, please answer in favor, oppose, abstain, or not entitled. I'll conduct a vote by roll call and declare the results of the vote. Stu Desser.
In favor?
Thank you. Kevin O'Keefe.
In favor.
Thank you. Olivia Shredder.
In favor.
Thank you. Roger Iqbal is not with us. Katie Landa.
Okay. In favor.
David Lee.
In favor.
Thank you. Sandra Leka.
in favor.
Thank you. With 6 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining, and 0 not entitled. Motion passes.
Great, keep the drink. Rachel, Kate, thank you. If you wish, you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting. If you are as sane as you seem you might be, you're welcome.
But we probably have more respect for you if you left.
Okay, thank you so
Well,
much.
But you've probably never made $100,000, so congratulations.
Well, good luck. And if there's anything else we could do by way of follow-up on this, especially if we want to include, what was the District 75 school? Is it
94.
94? Okay, so maybe in the minutes of the meeting, we could reflect that District 94 is on board with this, the PS 94 of New York City Department of Education Districts of 75 is supportive of this as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
for having
Kevin,
me.
for-
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for the
Carrying
time.
the ball and getting it here. Thank you very much.
That was Rachel's big lift. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great rest of your evening.
Yes.
It was nice meeting all of you.
Thanks. The, okay, so the committee last met in January, right? Okay. And Stuart and I think, have institutional memory of the committee, looking to find its way over time.
I called it a flashback.
I know you called it. And so I guess there's a pretty good, district needs statement that we could discuss at another meeting, if we have a next meeting before the end of the year. But I would just like to open this, and Sandy and I have talked about this a lot. I would just start with my bias and then let other members of the committee speak with other members of the board. I think we need a committee dedicated to education to young people in the community. And for various reasons, some of them historical, that, we had a chair who was no longer able to stay on the board for very, very valid reasons. So the committee and then Kevin took over the committee, and he was, has commitments as well that have, reluctantly, drawn him away, at least for the time being. So I would just like to come at this from the position that this is an important committee. And first of all, find out whether those of you who are actually on the committee agree with that. And then I have some ideas about how to breathe a little more life into it, but that they're not as relevant as what the 6 of you think. So I'm going to just be quiet here and recognize hands. So the question is, do you as a group feel there is a need for this committee to continue existing? And if so, how do we make this a more active with proactive part of the board? Because I'll stop right there. I'm about to recognize hands. So
I'll
Stuart.
speak, but I'm going to speak long for a second. So I am somewhat at odds with both you and Kevin on how this committee should operate. Now, I fully agree. I'm not worried, not hesitant. I fully agree that we need to pay a lot of attention to school crossing guards, to to school safety officers. All of these community needs have to be addressed, and we're probably in a better position than anyone to do that. So I am certainly in favor of that. However, the fact that we're something of a grassroots type of organization doesn't mean that the issues that we should deal with are only local and these kinds of details. So what I want to propose is extremely audacious for a community board or committee, but I'm going to do it, and then you can reject it. I think that first of all, education is possibly the most important thing that we can be talking about. Everything else that we deal with on this, or most other things we deal with on this board, mental health, physical health, um, um, uh, um, being a good citizen, crime, homelessness and housing, all of these issues trace back to education. People who are better educated or better able to cope with emotional distress, they are in better physical health. They have better jobs, they're better citizens because they are more competent as voters, and the list goes on. So I think it's extremely important that we focus on improving education, because as we know, the numbers, the data about education in this country, in this city, have been poor forever. And educational system, schools have been criticized forever. I mean, the criticism goes back 50 years. And there are reasons that things don't go well. Inertia is one of them. There's also this concern that you can't really experiment on live people, which is apparently true. But there are ways around that. So for 100 years, there have been laboratory schools that try to test out the methods. There have been experimental schools. Some of them proved to be pretty successful, but they never translate into the larger system. Now, some reasons are because it's perceived that the only reason they're successful is because they have a charismatic leader. Other times it's just inertia. Note, even in the New York City system, we have known for a while now, contrary to my own instincts, that that phonics is the better way to teach reading compared to whole language. And yet it wasn't until I think last year that the system actually transitioned. And even then there was resistance to it. So what I would propose is that we develop a plan for a, what are they called, community,
Community-based school.
no,
Community-based.
no, a community, not an intern, a community fellow. A community fellow. Who will, and I think we apply for them at the end of the year. Who will work on developing after-school laboratory schools that will be housed in our regular school district. That will partner with universities, not necessarily the education department, but brain science or whatever. And attempt to develop programs and test out programs and teaching methods that are different from what we use now. It's a very practical thing to do as a study. I won't dictate how it would be done, but one logical way is you take students and parents who volunteer for such a program, and then you randomly divide them into a group that will get conventional tutoring and a group that will get the experimental learning methodologies. Therefore, no one's losing out. We don't know who's going to come out ahead, but no one's losing out. You have a control group and you have an experimental group. And these are the same students who are going to the class in the regular daytime school. So now you have a connection with these students in the experimental program to the daytime teachers. And they will see if certain students are performing better, apparently as a consequence of either the tutoring or the experimental program. So I admitted from the start that this was audacious and ambitious. I don't think it's unreasonable. It requires the community's not just permission, but support and push to get it done. So that's basic, and we can in developing a concept before we employ a fellow, we can bring in some of the local authorities. I think Diane, I think on her name at NYU, used to be in the Reagan administration.
Yeah.
Yes, her.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her name, but there are local people who have expertise in this, and they can come and say either that we're crazy, which I'm willing to accept because I am, or they can say, well, you're crazy, but there's a way that we would suggest you do this. And there's schools, there's, Doris Meisner, am I getting the name right? There's a school on the Upper East Side called Central Park East, I think, that she established. So there are people around that we can bring in to talk to us about how we might develop this proposition.
I am not gonna comment. I would like to give the members of the committee, so let's do it by hand. Whoever puts your hand up next or first to comment on this.
Well, it's really.
No, so I'll comment. First of all, Steve, it's good. It's a vision that you have there. I'm not 100% sure. I'm still relatively new to all of this, what the scope of our, sort of powers are, but I mean, it would be really interesting to see that. I wonder if this, first of all, let me say, I think the committee is important and I think it should continue to exist. But I think that it would be interesting to see, having just met Rachel here for a minute, if this committee could play an interesting role in convening the PTA presidents of the various schools in our district, because I don't know if they're engaged with each other. And if there's a way for us to gather sort of input from the field by inviting those types of leaders to be in regular dialogue with us, whether that's quarterly, twice a year, and to do sort of a listening of what the interests are in the field to sort of help set our agenda as a committee. So that's something that I would like to see us possibly explore.
And I'll just comment on that.
Yeah.
An informational comment, not
Yeah,
a
please.
substantive comment, is that there is a District 2 President's Council. So all the PA presidents do belong to that, so therefore identifying a subset of PA principals would not be unreasonable. And there is also, a Community Education Council, which is a broader agenda, but that's.
I guess if
I'll
we
just-
were linked to them a little bit,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know historically what it's been, so I'm guessing without a background knowledge, but to connect with those committees to sort of help gather input for our agenda, I think would be powerful.
Right, no, I'm just, other than data, I'm really quiet. Would anyone else like to comment?
Yeah, I agree with David's idea of, really reaching out to parents and staff of the schools in our district. And understanding, what they see as important. As an educator and someone with a PhD in research, I think, Stuart, I think you're kind of undercutting, what would need to go in to, and there are, in doing this kind of, pilot program and evaluation, and there are all kinds of ethical issues with random controlled trials and issues around their validity. I think it's important to work with the community. I think this committee is very important. I think there are, tremendous issues going on now that are school-based around censorship, the treatment of transgender children. This has been a big issue for one of the school districts within our community district. And I think, achieving the class size caps is something, we might assist with, to reach out to administrators to understand what are the barriers to reaching those mandated class sizes. Having like a separate district for special education is something that has always troubled me as an educator, I believe very deeply in integrating children, with different kinds of abilities and backgrounds. So I think that's a real issue. And even like with the Spark project with the STEAM school, I was a social studies teacher. And also when I look at a lot of the problems that we're having now, I feel that, one of the problems is that people really don't know history. They don't understand our public policy making system and how it works. So I would even want to weigh in on that and say, it's very important to emphasize history and government in this curriculum as well as STEM and the arts. So those are kind of the issues. And I also I went to a conference and learned of a really exciting program. The CUNY Graduate Center and the Children's Defense Fund set up a pilot program for giving youth who are aging out of foster care guaranteed monthly income. It's low for New York City. It was just $1,000 a month. But they're finding tremendous success with this program, and the youth who were involved in the pilot are starting now to really ask for state legislation in this area. And so that's something I'm very interested in looking at through this committee. So I'm very committed to the work of this committee.
Okay, thank you. I would like to give every member of the committee a chance to speak, because I think we've heard three really great ideas and perspectives, so let's keep going. I'll do it by hands. I won't call on anyone, but does anyone else care to comment?
I would want to follow up.
No, I know, I do too, but I just want to give Sandra.
Yeah, I think I would probably go back to the original point of either meeting with the heads of these PTAs or some version of meeting with parents to find out the kinds of issues that they would like to address. Because we want to work with the community, we want to don't tell them what the issues are, we want to figure out what they are. So I think, and since it looks like you're trying to rethink this, then it would seem to me very important to base this in a collaborative way with the parents and see what would be relevant from their point of view. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, use of cell phones, blah, blah, which makes parents nuts. And someone would be, but again, that's just my view. I would love to hear, again, what parents would think. And then from there, you develop where you want to head or what you in collaboration with these folks think is really important.
Here,
You're welcome.
I'm gonna wait for any other hands of committee members who haven't spoken or wish to speak.
I was gonna say, well, I'm a little biased, but I'm very in favor of having the Youth and Education Committee continue. So I'm resigning soon, and hopefully I'll be replaced by someone else from my school, because I'm trying to encourage more students from my school to join. And there's this great, I think she's a current sophomore who she's applying to a CB6, and so hopefully she'll take over my spot. But I think it's a great point of accessibility for younger people to, when they join this board, to serve on a committee like this, because I'm also on the Housing and Homelessness Committee, and that has been a really wonderful learning experience. But I also just really don't know as much about housing as a lot of the other people on that committee. Like, I've never had to pay rent before, and there are just a lot of areas where I'm less experienced than other members. And I think in having a committee like this, it gives younger members a voice that they normally don't have. And I think, especially when we're talking about things like phone bans, the student perspective is usually not included in that, because it's, at the state legislature, and you have older people and they might be parents, and that's a great perspective, but they're usually not students, and they're pretty much never high school students. So I think we have a unique opportunity on this board to allow students to really share their experience and have it be valued and heard. And I think it's really valuable that we have it. So I'm very much in favor of the committee continuing to exist. Also, I loved your idea about convening the PTA presidents and just hearing more from members of our community.
Yeah, I think I want to give anyone else, thank you, obviously. I want to give anyone else here, Kevin. I was gonna call on you anyway, so you can speak. You're muted.
I was halfway there. I put the video on. I think the fact that there is a high school coming here, it's opportunistic opportunities like that where we think do need to have a committee. It doesn't necessarily have to meet every single month, but I'd like to think something like the Kips Bay, the Spark High School, this committee should take the lead so it doesn't fall through the cracks. And, John, we've talked about this. We don't want it to go too far down the road where we feel like, we didn't really have a say and we don't like the way that the school is. We're not there. I mean, we're still, ahead of the curve, but the committee is important for those major projects, to make sure that one committee is fully on top of. If we try to slide it into another committee, it may get diminished attention, which would not be good.
Is anyone else, I'd like to summarize what I think I've heard and then welcome further comments. And when I was a committee chair, I always had this rule about a 1 hour meeting, but let's see how we could do. But first of all, does anyone else who hasn't spoken or wants to, okay. So I've heard two or three really. First of all, there's clear desire that this committee move forward. That's the first thing I take away from this. And I certainly happen to agree to that. The second thing is we have two perspectives as to how to go about it. One is, Stuart, if I'm mischaracterizing this, correct me, but a curricular approach where you're looking at curriculum and how at a more, I'll just leave it like that for a moment. The other, and you can correct me when you speak, the other approach is let's talk to parent leaders who exist. And not just, and I think the idea of going to the schools in our district that are in our zone, it's probably more efficient than going to the CEC at this point, because as Katie pointed out, if you want to attend a lively meeting tomorrow night at Lab, you're going to send the CEC2 meeting and you will see what Katie is talking about. So I think working directly with parent leaders from schools in the district is a good idea. But I also do like the idea that there might be bigger things we want to opine on. Among them would be curriculum, and then I think Kevin raised a big issue of a big new school that's coming into the district, and we've got years actually to prepare for it. And what do we want to have to say about it? So that's what I've heard so far. Consensus on moving forward. A couple of different ideas about how to move forward. And I'll invite further comments. Stuart, you said you had a couple of things you wanted to respond to.
A few, the first, I think that's a great idea that we become a forum for various PTA members. I haven't understood quite where the overlap or conflict is between us and the CEC. So I'd like to better understand that. What I was talking about is not really curriculum, but modality, teaching methodology. I do understand that it's extremely complex. I think I tried to avoid the ethical issue with random assignment by suggesting that we have tutoring on one side and the experimental program on the other. And when you go in, you're going to be randomly assigned to one of these, but either way you come out ahead. I obviously don't, I would not be developing the program. Diane Ravitch.
I was going to say Ravitch, and I didn't know whether it was Ravitch or Ravitch.
Ravitch.
Right.
So I wouldn't, I'm not developing the program myself. I'm suggesting we invite people because I think someone has to do it and it's not happening. And it's not a denigration of the teachers that we have in our schools now. They're working often competently and putting a lot of effort. But the methods that they're being taught, whether in may not be working as well as they could. That's what, I mean, going back, I don't know if, Katie, you're familiar with it was called the 30 school program, also known as the 8-year program back in the 1920s or 1930s. That was one of the early programs. It looked like it showed success, but then nothing ever came of it. And you see that repeatedly over time. You have these experimental programs, but they never get adopted. So I'm suggesting that we have to do something really bold. And if it fails, if we don't get there, we don't get there. But I think we take a shot at it. I agree with Kevin. Kevin's been focused on Spark. And that's an opportunity, and also we have to be careful that they don't go off on their own without hearing from the community, and bringing in the parent teacher association again will be helpful. I also agree. I think it was Kevin. I'm forgetting who said it, but no, I think it was Sandra actually. History is important. I think it's a real problem. So the conventional wisdom is that you need a good education to get a good job. And then we hear nowadays, wait, not everyone has to go to college. The problem with those logics is that even if you're a plumber, you need other equipment to have a good life, and you need to be a good citizen. So my formulation for education is the aim is to have a good life and to be a good citizen. That's a much broader formulation than schools generally follow. And that means you do have to learn history. That means art is important. This focus on STEAM and it's too narrow. And so I think I agree with that as well. Anyway, even at Spark, we need to press for a broader curriculum.
I'm going to give anyone else a chance who wants to comment.
We're not in an hour yet.
No, because I just want to give her, because I have a thought about how to move ahead, but I don't want to put it forward until I've heard it. Okay, the first thing I came here tonight, hoping to find was that there was a consensus on moving ahead. That's important. We have it. The second thing was, well, how? And we've got two ideas, neither of which we would totally settle tonight, but the idea of starting with the schools in our area where there are real people doing things doesn't sound like a bad one, so I would say that sounds like a good one to me. The third is, how do we move this forward? So what I would suggest is that I'll go back to Sandy and talk with her and Kevin about this. But I think the way to move ahead is to keep our meeting on for May. I came in here tonight wondering whether we should do that, but I think we should. And if we can identify between now and then, just almost I'm sort of like a guy who wants to bring pizza in, which, and just have pizza here some night and invite people from some of the schools in the area and just say, what's going on? And it's a busy time of year. Let's see if we can get them here. But that's how I would suggest moving ahead and have that kind of broad-based discussion without closing doors on anything. As far as the CEC goes, it's elected by the parents. That's the one thing that it is. It's selected by parents and guardians. And it's it has limited actual power, much as this community board does, but it has high advisory local power, which a community board does. I can give you a long story of that. And then we'll need to find someone to move this forward. I've been around a long time on this. I think a fresh look moving forward would be good. But I'd be happy to be part of this, as that happens, but we don't have to decide that tonight. But I think a fresh perspective running this, other than the guy who's been on the CEC for 9 years, whatever the heck it was, running it is the right idea. So if it's okay with you guys, assembled people, I'll go back to Sandy with, it should continue. We should get back together. We should try to do it in May, and we should aim to involve other people from outside who actually have kids in schools that who are been elected within the school to be part of it. Does that make sense?
So for May, you would invite parents
And invite,
and teachers as well, right?
you know what, that's another good one. Yeah, I mean, if you think about a leadership team at a school, it's parents and teachers together. So let's we have outreach at obviously at 281. We've always had outreach, Kevin, at 116. I have connections with a lot of different members on the board, have connections with different schools. So I'll take it on myself to get us to the next meeting. And at some time between now and September, we're gonna need someone to move this ahead, but let's just take one step at a time. Is that a generally consensual comment? Kevin, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, Stuart, does that make sense to you?
It does.
Okay. Everybody else has spoken. Okay, so I'll go back to Sandy with this, and we'll try to get back with something actionable. Is there any I was gonna go through the district needs statement, but let's save that, because it sounds like we might be building a new one.
I will volunteer though that I checked in with Jesus today, and we are allowed to separate it into paragraphs.
Okay, any other comments, any other old or new business? And once again, I'd like to thank Kevin and Rachel Kate for getting the ball moving tonight, and I think we had a useful discussion, and it's about 1 hour after we started, which is what I think is a respectful time for a meeting. So I'll let someone move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Hearing no objection, meeting is adjourned at 7:35. Bye all. That's